Freddy Krueger is an iconic name associated with one of the most popular horror franchises, Nightmare on Elm Street. Over the years, these franchises have seen big developments, with reboots and revivals happening constantly. Wes Craven's Scream franchise was brought back to life with much success recently, and it turned out that the primary characters of Tara and Sam Carpenter were daughters of Billy Loomis, the very first antagonist from the 1996 film. But did you know even Freddy Krueger had a daughter who did not get a chance to play a significant role in the vast number of films, but managed to have a pretty exciting arc? She even took her father's role at one point in one of her significant arcs. Let's look into the character of Catherine Krueger, or Maggie Burroughs as she's known now, and learn about her adventures in dealing with her father. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Who is the daughter of Freddy Krueger? Freddy Krueger has become one of the most iconic characters in cinema. From his first appearance in 1984, the year that's also known for giving us some of the best cinematic masterpieces, the character ensured that it will haunt us every time we try to fall asleep. And it makes sense, considering Wes Craven has proven himself a true auteur in the genre. But ever since the first movie, where he killed a young Johnny Depp, there have been a lot of exciting developments in Krueger's lore based on various projects. Apart from the fact that he had managed to battle Jason Voorhees, one of the most intriguing additions to Freddy Krueger's lore was his daughter's revelation. Before he became the nightmarish being we know from the movies, Freddy Krueger was a family man. He had a child with his wife when he was known as the Springwood Slasher. This unexpected twist in his story, the revelation of his daughter, significantly adds a new layer of complexity and intrigue to his character, engaging us further. Considering Freddy was a horrible human being, Catherine Krueger, his daughter, had a very tragic upbringing. Her mother, Loretta Krueger, discovered the secret room that Freddy had created in the basement where he would collect newspaper cuttings and torture weapons for his victims. When she went and told Freddy that she wouldn't tell anyone about it, Freddy strangled her to death in front of 6-year-old Catherine. But soon, Freddy would get caught and arrested for the murders, and young Catherine got put into foster care until the Burnham family adopted her. Eventually, her records were sealed, and she was moved away from Springwood to prevent the world from making the connection between her and her father. But Freddy didn't forget about her, and sure enough, he found a way to rope her into his plans in what was supposed to be the final entry to the Nightmare on Elm Street movie, Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. Wes Craven and Michael DeLuca were involved in writing the project, which meant we were getting Craven's blessing for the arc of Freddy. In The Dream Child, the kids somehow managed to put down Freddy, but the freak was able to return, and he went on to kill all the children and teenagers in Springwood. There was only one survivor, and he would be the one to unite the father and his daughter, even though he would have to die himself by the end. But this survivor, John Doe, will go through some of Freddy's finest designs of nightmares, involving planes, crashing houses, witches on broomsticks, and whatnot. Now, Freddy manages to use his lucrative nightmare to get John out of town, something he can't do himself. But before doing that, he gets John to fall unconscious after hitting a rock. The unconscious John, who had seen visions of a girl in his nightmare, indicating that Freddy would be using him, wakes up to find he is an amnesiac due to the injury and can't even identify himself. The movie introduces us to Maggie Burroughs, a doctor at the Recovery House youth shelter in Central City. The very first time we see her, she's seen with one of her patients, who is a kid with a tendency towards arson, as he made a pipe bomb in the shelter. Anyway, our friend John Doe pops up in Central City after walking in, and the police discover him and take him to the shelter. Meanwhile, 3 teens, Spencer Lewis, Tracy Swan, and Carlos Rodriguez, plan to run away from the shelter, so we can assume they can be exciting candidates for Freddy Krueger. When John is brought to Maggie, he tries to explain to her that he fears he will be killed if made to fall asleep. On the other hand, Maggie has been having dreams of a girl with red ribbons, supposedly Catherine Krueger, and some water tower, and it all appears like some sort of old memory. Now Maggie's friend Doc arrives, played by none other than Yaphet Kotto from movies like 1979's Alien and 1987's The Running Man. And this guy seems to have quite an insight into the dream and real-world connections. He talks about dream demons, the crazy piranha-looking snake skulls that roam around and allow Krueger to kill people in their dreams. Maggie makes the stupid decision of taking John back to Springwood so that it can bring back some of his memories. We can't blame her because she didn't know about the situation in this town, but the three teens manage to get on the van with her, and they are only discovered when John suddenly sees the girl telling him to go back. Yes, he's been warned about his moves, but they continue into the town, and here they are made aware of an eerie presence as the people appear to be in a trance state. But then they come across the fact that Freddy's child was taken away, and John tries to connect the dots about why Freddy didn't kill him, so he firmly believes that he is Freddy's son. It's like Blade Runner 2049, where Ryan Gosling thought he was Harrison Ford's son, but it would be too far-fetched to believe they developed the story about this arc. Later, they also find some drawings by a kid signed as K. Krueger, which John takes as the name of a boy ranging from Kevin to Kyle. All this time, the three teens from the shelter hang around the town only to end up at 1428 Elm Street, where Freddy Krueger plays around with them. John decides to help them by entering the dream where Robert Englund has the time of his life, giving us some of the craziest moments in Krueger's dream world. As John is pushed into the dream, he ends up falling off of the house again, and as he falls through the sky, he discovers a string on his shirt that says, "In case of emergency, pull string." Yeah, that's some Bugs Bunny stuff. I'm pretty sure Krueger has been watching a lot of Looney Tunes. As John pulls the string, a parachute emerges, and he glides through the sky. Right then, Krueger pops up next to him in a parachute. So John finds that this is the right time to tell him that he knows he is Krueger's son. But Krueger thinks he's wrong, and that letting John live is a means of getting back his daughter. Freddy then cuts off John's parachute's static lines, and he plunges to his death on a bed of spikes. In the real world, he falls to the ground, and as Maggie goes to see him, he lets her know that Freddy has a daughter before dying. Now, Freddy has been successful, as he managed to use John Doe to gain access to Maggie's mind, and since Maggie leaves Springwood, the barrier for Freddy gets broken. When Maggie returns to the shelter, she finds that Kelly, who is working there, doesn't remember Carlos Spencer or even John, who had all become victims of Freddy. So Freddy managed to kill all of them and simultaneously ensure they were utterly forgotten. Doc, who somehow can control his dreams, fills Maggie with this information. Maggie decides to go and check her adoption papers, only to realize that her real name was Catherine Krueger before she was adopted after her father's arrest and murder. Freddy starts haunting the people in the shelter with unique nightmares for each of them, but the move goes against him as Doc discovers more about Freddy while tearing a shred of his sweater and bringing it into the real world. That's when they discover that Freddy can be brought into the real world from the dream world. So Catherine, Tracy, the only survivor amongst the teenagers, and Doc decided to lay a trap for Freddy. She puts on some 3D glasses and goes into Freddy's mind, where she enters his past to discover his horrible childhood, where he was treated poorly by his parents and his growing mutilation tendency. Finally, she ends up witnessing herself as a child watching Freddy kill his wife. Then Catherine manages to pull Freddy out of the dream world and a fight ensues, in which Catherine removes his glove. Freddy tries to make her wear the glove and realize its power like some dark side stuff Palpatine would do, but she puts it on and then uses it to stab him in the chest. Finally, she uses the pipe bomb and puts it on his chest and gives the badass line, "Happy Father's Day," with a kiss, and then escapes with the others as the bomb explodes Freddy into bits. In a somewhat over-the-top effect, Freddy's head flies onto the screen before it explodes and the dream demons appear. Catherine announces the title of the movie, Freddy's Dead. By the way, the girl that John kept seeing in his visions was young Catherine herself, stopping him from doing what Freddy was making him do. But Catherine's adventures with Freddy do not end here. What happened to her after the movie? After the film's events, we saw a continuation of the arc in the short live comic book series A Nightmare on Elm Street: The Beginning from Innovation Publishing. It follows up on Catherine's arc, where we witnessed that she has started having nightmares of Freddy again, and during one of these nightmares, she brings his glove back to the real world with herself. But it disappears when she tries to show it to Tracy and Doc. Realizing that something's wrong and there's a chance that Freddy might be trying to reach her from beyond, she decides to investigate and return to the town to get a better grip on things. Tracy accompanies her, and the duo sees that the city has undergone profound changes since they last lived there. But Catherine starts getting visions of what happened to Freddy whenever she reaches a place associated with him. When she goes to his place, she starts seeing how Freddy's father or stepfather is treating him, following which he uses a razor to kill him. But they aren't the only ones present there, as the dream demons witness Freddy's rage, which indicates that they have been observing him for a while. So they decide to go to the basement of the house, only to discover newspaper cuttings of Freddy's victim, which make it look like a trophy room for his murder rampage. Right then, Catherine feels as if Freddy had buried his father in the floor of the house, and Tracy helps her in digging through the ground. As they do that, a body pops up, releasing energy that escapes the body and heads out. The power of the energy is strong enough that the entire house gets shaken, and Tracy and Catherine somehow manage to escape. When Doc hears about what happened to the duo, he asks them to return, and this does adhere to Catherine's feelings that there's a chance she might end up triggering some event that will bring back Freddy again. But she still feels like she should investigate, and decides to go to the courthouse with Tracy to learn more about what she might have inherited from Freddy. As she reaches the footsteps of the courthouse, she witnesses the events of the time when Freddy's trial took place, and it turns into a very tragic tale. Freddy's representative wins the case because everything that was found against him was found without the proper permits, so the judge decides to drop the charges against Freddy. Catherine witnesses all this, but before she can continue, Tracy stops her and brings her back to her senses since she is fed up that she can't see any of these visions. Catherine decides to check the documents, only to find that Freddy had claims over an old abandoned power plant on the southeast side of the town. She realizes that there might be some clues regarding Freddy there, and since she must have inherited the place, they decide to visit the site. Now, on their way, Catherine gets another vision of an enraged crowd of parents who lashed out at the police for freeing Freddy. They decide to take matters into their own hands and kill him themselves. Even the police end up complying, fearing the fate of their children, so we get to see Freddy being confronted by the people at the abandoned power plant. But Freddy doesn't fear any of them and stands strong and continues to threaten them about killing their kids, as a result of which they start stabbing him, and finally they set him on fire. Right then, the dream demons show up, and they communicate with Freddy and decide to give him the powers. Freddy relishes being set on fire, and Catherine, who is witnessing all this as a vision, starts feeling the fire too before she disappears in front of Tracy, as her energy gets sucked out of her, leaving behind her jacket. But there's another scream from behind her, and as Tracy sees something on fire, she tries to stop it with the jacket, only to see Freddy's hat materialize in front of her. Right then, she hears the evil laughter of Freddy echoing through the power plant. Sadly, there was supposed to be a third issue of the comic book series to wrap up the story, but Innovation Publishing declared bankruptcy, and the third issue still needed to be completed and is unpublished. However, the comic book editor Andy Mangels made the script for the third issue available online for a while, but that would also get removed soon enough. But don't be sad, even though this story was incomplete, Catherine managed to make a strong comeback in one of the craziest crossover events in comic books. Daddy's back and daughter becomes female Freddy. Ever since the epic crossover event, Freddy vs. Jason, the world has asked for more stories from this arc, and the comic books managed to deliver. The 2003 movie was followed by the 2007 six-issue comic book series from James Caan, titled Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash, which roped in Ash Williams from the brilliant Evil Dead movies into the story. Now, the story has a gruesome ending, in which Ash manages to stop everything and end the story at Crystal Lake. However, only the beginning of another arc, Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash from 2009, followed up the arc with the Necronomicon playing a more significant role in the story and a much more brutal arc. While we've seen Catherine Krueger or Maggie Burroughs as more of a good one so far, things are bizarre in this arc. As Jason returns to life and Freddy is brought back to the real world using the Necronomicon by the government, Maggie tries to gather all of their victims because she thinks their powers could be used to stop him, the two supernatural beings. She even tries to seek help from Ash Williams, who doesn't believe both freaks are back and rejects her proposal. It's when Jason goes and kills Ash's girlfriend that Ash realizes that things are back to how they were the last time. He joins Maggie's team, who, along with her partner Neil, tries to help the other victims use their power for their benefit. But she doesn't reveal that she's Freddy's daughter to them. Instead, she tells them that she is the daughter of the government personnel getting help from Freddy. As they confront Freddy, he reveals to the authorities that they've been fools and that he has control of the entire situation. Right then, the agent tries to use his glove against him, but Maggie snatches it out of his hand, wears it herself, and kills the agent. A shocked Neil goes and tries to talk to her, but Maggie reveals to them that she has been doing all this as a part of Freddy's plan, which is up with him and kills everyone. In a rather disturbing turn of events, it turns out that Freddy and Maggie, whom we should call Catherine now, considering she prefers it, are in an incestuous relationship. As Freddy decides to go against Washington using his new powers as the Necronomicon has become a part of him, Jason and Catherine become his sidekicks. But then Jason decides to go against Freddy at some point and asks Catherine to fight him off. The two get into a fight with their stabbing weapons, but Ash breaks through the White House using a tank, and the tank lands right on top of Catherine, which is how she dies. It was a rather throwaway ending for a character with a lot more potential, and even the twist doesn't work in her favor, as she was building up to be a lot more interesting with the plan to unite the victims to go against the two freaks. She became like a Nick Fury kind of person here, as she united all the powerful beings who later turned into a team that ended up killing Freddy and stopping him from using his powers. But the fact that Catherine was always in cahoots with Freddy didn't make much sense, and it only ended up being something for shock value. It is an exciting twist of events for her character, but this also happened before, as each time her comic book appearances have had a different tone. There was a similar fate for her character in the beginning series of comic books because she was going to end up becoming like her father, which made more sense considering she was in a desperate attempt to find more about Freddy and explore him as if something had haunted him, or maybe Freddy had managed to remain in her head. Even though the comic books might have changed her arc, we will surely remember her appearance in the Freddy's Dead film, where she managed to kill off her father and end the nightmare for a while. Lisa Zane gave a brilliant performance in the role, and she became another one of the iconic characters in the horror franchise. Wes Craven himself planned for this character, but never really brought it to fruition until Michael DeLuca managed to write the script for Freddy's Dead and give the perfect means of getting this character into the franchise. Also, the most remarkable thing about this character is that she's the only one in the franchise who manages to put on Freddy's glove and use it against him. Marvelous verdict. Even though many things could have been done with this character, the franchise intends to have different plans for the character. Generally, the tendency is to reboot an entire franchise with the child being given the helm. Still, then, we must ask, can anybody else ever replace Freddy Krueger? Fans were disappointed when Robert Englund did not play the role in the 2010 reboot, even though Jackie Earle Haley managed to give his take on the character. No one can replace Robert Englund's iconic chuckle as Krueger, which will always be the most memorable depiction of the character. Now that we get to see reboots and revivals all the time, it would be interesting to see another take on the character of Catherine Krueger, giving us a much more insightful take on this tragic character. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one. Be safe. Thanks, everyone.